Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the nation's debt as the number one problem that I see facing the United States today. During my research, I found a debt clock. It's called the U.S. debt clock. If you just Google it, you can pull it up. And it's fairly interesting because you can sit there and watch it count up. It's counting up in a couple $1,000s, anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 or $6,000 about every second, and fairly crazy to see how we just keep racking it up. Currently, right now, we're at over $21 trillion of debt. That is just a huge number. I don't know. I have a really hard time even processing $21 trillion. How it's just such a large number that I almost find it impressive that we were able to dig ourselves this big of a hole. I understand that our economy is very large and that the cash flow and everything is incredibly big, but still to be in that kind of debt is going to be extremely hard to pay off. On the National Debt Clock website, it's actually a .org, the interest per year on our debt is $190 billion. The interest per second is $6,027. And if we broke up the debt per U.S. citizen, it's over $65,000 per citizen. I think that's fairly safe to say that that's more than the majority of us even make in this class a year. I know it's more than what my wife and I make combined. So to be in that kind of debt per citizen is just a huge problem. I think with any problem, we need to look at how are we going to fix it. And I think this is another problem, is that there isn't necessarily a good answer on the balance, is what it's called. That I found an article called U.S. Debt Crisis Summary, Timeline and Solutions, written by Kimberly Amindo back in March 19th of this year. So it's fairly recent, and there's some interesting stats that she talks about, and it talks about the debt to the GDP ratio. And the GDP is a gross domestic product. It's something that economic people use to track the economics and to have a convertible number throughout the years. But the last time that ratio was more than 100%, which we're currently at about 107%, was when we were paying for World War II. So now I understand we've been in war essentially for about the last 30 years, and so I would think that does have some impact on the national debt. We also need to look at some other warning signs and at some other countries. For your debt, a debt crisis occurs when a country is in danger of not meeting its debt, and this is from Kimberly's article. In Iceland, the investors became concerned that the country couldn't pay off their debt, and this caused the whole country essentially to go into bankruptcy. This was back in 2008. I don't see how we're not on the verge of this. I'm having a really hard time processing how the lenders aren't concerned about the U.S. being able to pay back its bonds. How I just don't understand where our money or value is even headed when we just keep digging ourselves into a bigger debt. And I just don't see how the politicians that have got us to this point are miraculously going to be able to turn around and fix the problem. This has been a problem for the last several years. It's not like this debt woke up one day and we're miraculously $20 trillion in debt. It's not It's not how it works. It's interesting reading some more of the article on the balance because it talks about the Democrats and the Republicans and how there's obviously controversy there and each side's pointing fingers at the other. And it talks a lot about the Bush tax cuts back in 2008 that caused the financial crisis because it lowered the tax revenue. So people are wanting to blame that and say, well, we lowered our revenue, and so that's why we went into debt. Well, if you lower your revenue, every household, at least my household, I know that if our revenue gets lowered, we have to lower our expenses, and for some reason there's this disconnect there with the government. Overall, $21 trillion is a huge amount, and I don't see us chipping away or even slowing down at the rate that we're growing that debt. So that's the reason why I see this as being the number one problem in the United States.